Hello and welcome to another video, and welcome to the last video for the Thomas Hardy Readalong, last introductory video. No, Jude the Obscure wasn't Thomas Hardy's final novel, but it's the last one we're reading. And if you would like to know why I've swapped around the order of The Well-Beloved and Jude the Obscure, you can see the video for The Well-Beloved, which will be linked below. But we are reading Jude the Obscure last. It is technically Hardy's 14th and final novel. After Hardy published Jude the Obscure, there is a myth that due to the reception of it, which was quite negative, that he decided to just give up writing novels. But there are lots of people now, lots of academics who question that, whether that is actually true, because he did stop writing and publishing novels, but he then continued writing poetry, which he'd been writing the whole time, but he went on to have an incredibly successful career as a poet, all the way up until his death. So we've got several more decades of him writing amazing poetry. And I think it is a little bit of a myth, because although Jude the Obscure wasn't incredibly well received by many people, it was well received by lots of people, and lots of critics also, I was about to say emailed, no, that's not correct, wrote letters to Hardy specifically telling him how great they thought it was. And that they did say that, maybe I can't quite be so public about how great I think it is, but it was certainly, I think, probably slightly better received than many people would have you think. So I should probably tell you a little bit about it first. I think Jude the Obscure is definitely in a handful of Hardy novels that most people have heard of. I think when people talk to me about Hardy, they mention Far from the Madding Crowd, they mention Tess of the D'Urbervilles. They might mention something like The Woodlanders or Under the Greenwood Tree, because those are kind of pastoral scenes that people remember. But lots of people mention Jude as well. And it is the one that people think of when they think of Hardy's most miserable novels, because it is. So I thought I would start with a little bit of a plot summary. This will contain no spoilers, and it will be very, very brief, but just to give you a sense of the kind of novel that you are in for. Oh God, and you are. So we're going to start, as always, with a little bit of a plot summary, no spoilers, really quick introduction. So this book is about Jude Fawley. Jude is a young man who aspires to greater things. He is very poor, and he has a schoolmaster who kind of pushes him to achieve better and points to the distant spires. I'm just going to grab my book here. The distant spires of Christminster, which is Oxford. And that's why this this is my favourite copy of this book. This is why this beautiful edition has the spires of Oxford on. But he encourages Jude to kind of aspire to greater things, not necessarily the spires of Oxford, but that is kind of how Jude interprets it. I have another copy of this book which has a young lady on, and it's a bit tatty, and this was, I think I've had this, there we go, since 1996 it says in the front, which is when I first read it, and it was the first Hardy novel I read actually. But I think this woman, I'm not sure which one of the love interests she's supposed to represent. It's not a love triangle, don't worry. But there are two women. The first is Arabella, who is a kind of country girl. She is quite simple. I think she's portrayed by Hardy as being perhaps not very bright, but perhaps just interested in the simpler things in life. She doesn't really have any aspirations to move out of town. She doesn't have any aspirations to really go away and do anything. She actually does, but she doesn't have aspirations to do that. And there's a sense from how Hardy writes her that she kind of traps Jude into staying. Later on, there is Jude's cousin Sue, who is quite feisty and quite infuriating at times, but in a really likeable way. Like I really like Sue. She is really complicated, and I personally think Hardy's best character that he's ever written. She's just so complicated and so contradictory, and just the things that happen in this book specifically to do with her. She's just such a fantastic character study, and I love her. I think she's my favourite more than Jude. I think they're my two favourite characters in all of Hardy's, in all of his novels. I just think they're absolutely amazing, but I think Sue is probably my favourite. So bad things happen. That's all I'm going to say. Let's have a little bit of a look at some contemporary reviews. It was called by several reviewers Jude the Obscene. That'll give you a flavour of what people thought of it. One of the first reviews I found said, Now, here we have a titanically bad book by Mr. Hardy. We have had bad books from him before, but so far his bad books have been feeble rather than anything else. In Jude the Obscure, however, we have Mr. Hardy running mad in right royal fashion. That was one of my favourite reviews. I think the reviews of Jude are probably my favourite reviews of any of Hardy's books. Margaret Oliphant did many reviews of Hardy books, and she wasn't a fan of any of them except for Tess, which she really liked. But her review of Jude the Obscure, I mean, there are so many quotes I could have taken from it. Like, I don't know if you can find it online. I got access like through the university, so I don't know if it's easy to find. If it is, I will link below. But if not, just trust me, it's absolutely brilliant. So she said, I do not know for what audience Mr. Hardy intends his last work, which has been introduced, as he tells us, for the last 12 months into a number of decent houses in England and America, with the most shameful portions suppressed. How they could be suppressed in a book whose tendency throughout is so shameful, I do not understand. She also said that, because Tess was so brilliant a book, that Jude, by following Tess, and I quote, accentuates its own grossness, indecency, and horror. She called Jude an assault on the stronghold of marriage. This is really one of the books where people criticise quite a lot Hardy's attitude towards marriage. It started with the Woodlanders, it continued in Tess, and right here this is the pinnacle of it. This is the pinnacle of Hardy hating marriage, apparently. And some people did praise the novel. Like I said, it wasn't entirely hate. There were kind of moderate praise for it. So one review said, Hardy is the greatest living English writer of fiction, in intensity and grip of life, and above all, in the artistic combination of the real and the ideal. He surpasses any of his French contemporaries. Not his British contemporaries, just the French ones. Jude the Obscure is not his greatest work, but no other living novelist could have written it. I think that's kind of a compliment. You're a great writer. Terrible novel. No one else could have done this badly. I don't know. While some criticised the realism and the lack of a romantic view of life in Jude the Obscure, there were equal numbers of people who praised the realism and the lack of a romantic view of life. I think this novel, for me, is like the pinnacle of an example of how some people can hate a novel so much while other people equally are absolutely obsessed and love it. I know so many people who despise Jude the Obscure, absolutely hate it. And I absolutely love it. It is, I think, my favourite novel of all time. I think sometimes when I compare it to other Hardy novels, sometimes, depending on how I'm feeling, like The Woodlanders sometimes comes out, you know, when you're kind of reading all of them. But in general, I think Jude the Obscure is my favourite novel of all time. So in terms of adaptations, there have been many. There are so many adaptations of Jude. Not as many as there are of Tess, I don't think, but there are a lot of adaptations. My favourite, though, is still the film starring Kate Winslet as Sue and Christopher Eccleston as Jude. I think it's not the same as the novel. It takes a lot of liberties. It focuses on the things that aren't really of great emphasis in the book, and then it kind of doesn't mention other things. But I think it gets the sense of the novel, and it gets the kind of the atmosphere of the novel, and it gets the misery of the novel, and the whole tone of it is perfect. I am completely biased because I adore Kate Winslet, and Christopher Eccleston is my favourite actor. So the two of them in a film is just absolutely perfect. And I think it's a brilliant film. And I think they both, I read the novel first, but then I watched the film very soon after. And in my head, whenever I read Jude the Obscure, it's always Christopher Eccleston when he was young, or younger. And I just think it's a brilliant adaptation. So I would really, really recommend it if you haven't seen it. I just think it's wonderful. If you've seen other adaptations that you prefer, let me know in the comments below. In terms of audiobooks, I don't think I've ever listened to an audiobook of Jude the Obscure. I might try it this time round, but I've noted that there is one by Neville Jason who did the Naxos audio, and they're normally really, really good. And there is, of course, one by Samuel West, who is fantastic. So I'm assuming that that will be as well. So the only thing we have left to do is the misery scale. If this is your first Hardy book and this is your first introduction, the misery scale is just a sense of how miserable this Hardy book we're talking about is compared to all the other Hardy books. They're not all miserable. Some of them are 0, some of them are 1, 2 on the scale. This entire scale, so this is out of 5, this entire scale has been affected. Each book has been affected by where Jude is and where Tess is, because those are the most miserable. So everything else just has to be in comparison with that. So out of 5, can you guess? Jude is off the scale for I mean, off the scale. The scale isn't big enough. By saying 5 out of 5, it doesn't do it justice to the misery. I'm smiling, but I would, if you need to, look up content warnings. There is a lot of them. I do think, people might disagree with me, but I think Jude is more miserable than Tess. Because I think, no, Tess is wall-to-wall misery as well. I was going to say, there are some light moments. No, there aren't. There are no light moments in Tess. There are moments of love, moments of, I don't know. I think the things that happen in Jude, though, are more horrific. One reviewer actually said of something that happens, and I won't say what it is, but something that happens in Jude, which is quite a horrific scene. And I remember this in the film version, just being completely traumatised, actually physically seeing it, even after I read it and I knew what was coming. But I think that some reviewers had said that that was almost farcical because it was realistic that that would happen. But it's so deeply traumatic, and when you're reading it, I personally think it kind of makes sense that that would happen. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But I do think it's incredibly miserable, but it's off the scale. It's off the scale of misery. We've peaked. So we've peaked. So this is the final one. This is the final Hardy novel. Have you read Jude the Obscure? What do you think of it? Do you hate it? I know many people do. Do you love it like me? Let me know your thoughts. If you are reading it for the first time, be brave. You can do this. Come and chat to us on Discord if you need some emotional support from your fellow readers. It can be a really challenging read. It can be incredibly rewarding though. But thank you very much if you have been taking part in the read along. It has been an absolute privilege to read along with everyone. And I will see you very soon in another video, which probably isn't about Thomas Hardy. And until then, thank you so much for watching.